You are listening to Basement Chronicles with Lisa Dublin, episode number 21. This is for the heavy lifters. And if you don't know what that is, stick around, I'm going to tell you. Hey, you made it! Welcome to my basement. I'm Lisa Dublin, a health and life coach, and I help professional and executive women to live, lead, and speak with confidence. Because you know what? Developing your confidence and deepening your faith in God is the best formula for an amazing life. So, are you ready? Let's go. Hey, podcast listeners, thank you so much for being here today. Today is a very special episode because it's another vulnerable one. Well, they actually are all vulnerable, but perhaps to varying degrees of vulnerable. But I really wanted to talk about what happens when a student's success overtakes the teacher's. What should the teacher be thinking, and how does the teacher respond? My point today is that if you are that person who is a mentor, a coach, an advisor, or a teacher to anyone who has greatness inside of them, don't get jealous or guarded, and definitely not envious. Celebrate your own strength in being able to lift that heavy, as I like to call it. And then, great woman or great man who's listening to me right now, go out and crush it in your own lane. I've really been thinking about this topic for a couple weeks now, and let me tell you why. In two of my spheres of influence and expertise, speaking and coaching, I have seen people who I highly respect and who are considered the gurus in the field slightly eclipsed by their students. And I feel like I'm going through a little bit of that myself, and so it is a relatable and interesting juncture for us to explore together. But before I go on, can I ask you to hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening from? It could be YouTube. Please subscribe to Basement Chronicles, or Apple or Spotify. That way, then you will be notified every time I release a new podcast. Have you done it yet? Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Over the years being in business, I have refined my niche market, who I offer business to. If you started listening to this podcast from the beginning, you might have realized that there was a time I used to say that I coach A-type women. They have strong personalities. They analyze everything. They are very exact. Many of them are very black and white. All of the things. But I've always been able to handle them because apart from having that kind of personality, they are always the ones who have a lot of potential and do great things. And I understand their greatness. Their star, their brightness does not in any way diminish me or make me intimidated. I've been thinking about it, and I think part of the reason is because, humbly I say, that I shine brightly myself. So I look across at other speakers, at other coaches, at other people doing great things, and I see myself to some extent in them. I recognize greatness because I myself within me, and with all the things that I've done, I've been out there and accomplished quite a lot. I admire them without being intimidated. And so I've always gone out in my marketing, in who I put my focus upon, to attract such people, because I think that the spaces that I create for them with my writing, my speaking, and the coaching makes it comfortable for them to be themselves. And you know what? In coaching sessions as a public speaking coach and as a life coach, it is amazing to see the strength of a client on display. I see spunk. I see a healthy self-confidence that they often do not show out there because they think that they are expected to be modest and they're not supposed to shine the light too brightly on who they are. But in a coaching session where they know that it is expected, allowed, celebrated, these women just open up. I love to see them own their prowess, tout their own horns in the session. And at a certain level, I feel like all of these diva-esque women, these A-type women, these high-achieving women, a lot of these women know that they're all that. They believe it about themselves. And I feel like I just simply validate it in a way that helps them to measure it, temper it, so that it makes sense in their worlds. So yes, they do have a diva complex, but I love that about them because I feel like there's a little bit about that in me. So I've always gone out to get those women. Now, the other reason that I'm bringing up this topic, and maybe I am just simply setting the stage for my argument and discussion today. Remember I told you about those gurus that I look up to, I follow, and I see people come into their circles and in some way almost approximate or even eclipse them? I want to mention two. So the story of Eric Thomas, who has been my motivational guru speaker for so many years now. And, a couple years ago, his team introduced Jamal King into their circle. And the dynamic just simply changed. Eric Thomas is known as the number one motivational speaker of our times. At least that's how he builds himself. And then comes Jamal, who's way more disciplined, okay, whose faith is so spectacular in a way that Eric's isn't, and, who has certain things in order, so he almost upset their play because he didn't fit into a lot of the things and the way that they did things. So, for example, Eric Thomas would say to you, okay, follow your dream and go after your calling. Jamal King came and said, do not leave the 9 to 5. Work the 9 to 5 even while you build a real estate empire so that your 9 to 5 can, in a sense, fuel your dream. However, they were able, and that is the strength of these men together, they have been able to gel to a certain extent. Sometimes I have to admit it gets iffy. You can see that there are tensions that sometimes Eric Thomas gets caught up in Jamal King's brand of greatness. And for me, I'm like, what is your problem? The reason we like you, primarily, at least for me, what cannot be sullied or eclipsed is the way that Eric Thomas looks at God as Father. His relationship with God is such a love relationship for a man that it colors and tinges everything that he presents. So even though a Jamal with so much faith comes along and teaches Eric's tribe, me included, about discipline and about faith, you will always look, at least I will always look to Eric Thomas as that person whose relationship with God is singular. And so the lesson there for me, looking at him in relationship with Jamal, was to stay in your lane of greatness and to learn what it is about you that attracts the greats. The thing is, Jamal King used to listen to Eric Thomas and still does. That is where he found his footing, even though he was doing all these great things in his life where real estate was concerned and raising his family a certain way. He looked to Eric Thomas's motivational talks and so on for inspiration all of these years. And so in a way, he manifested what Eric Thomas had been talking about, just at his level and in his own way. And so now, to see Jamal now be part of the gang, so it was 3 people, Eric Thomas, CJ, and Carl, and now we have Eric Thomas, CJ, Carl, and Jamal. To see that as somebody who has been listening to the podcast all this time, it took a little getting used to. But the growth mindset says, yes, we can accept it. Yes, we can expand to see ourselves as moving from student to guru. I can just imagine the kind of work that Eric Thomas has had to do to recognize, hey, there's somebody else in a sphere of greatness that approximates mine. I don't know that he has been that close to anybody of that ilk for a while. And so there's a lot of learning there for me as somebody who also deals with pouring into the heavyweights, pouring into people with their own brand of greatness. And that lesson is to never lose sight of who you are. Never lose sight of the fact that You have a hand in helping other people into their greatness, and you have to be humble enough to just simply accept that that is your role. And then you turn your sights back to your own self to figure yourself out and to stay in your lane, in greatness and in excellence. That was the lesson there for me with Eric Thomas and Jamal King. I want to move on to my second example, that of Brooke Castillo and Stacey Bayman. When I met Stacey Bayman, all I heard her talking about in her early podcasts in particular was about her life coach, Brooke Castillo. Brooke Castillo is considered one of the greats, the gurus in life coaching. Like, she's just big, okay? Like, in the industry, in her mindset, and so on. What is remarkable about Stacey Bayman is the way that she has been so hungry to learn everything that Brooke has offered. She is one of her best students, and she takes pride in saying that of all the students that Brooke has taught, I think she has made the second most money. It means something to her. But here's what the student has done. The student, having modeled her business on the precepts of the master, has now become a master in her own lane. And let me tell you how that played out for me on the outside. I bought Stacey Bayman's program before I bought Brooke Castillo's because the marketing was way more aggressive, because it was more in your face, it was more what I needed. So it means that off the profile of the guru, the student was able to find her own niche, one that appealed to people like me. And I always sit back and I wonder to myself, what is Brooke Castillo thinking of Stacey Bayman? Number one, there has to be the pride and, the whole stroking of the ego that this person has modeled her business after me and taken everything that I have taught. She's paid me millions of dollars to teach her, and she has excelled. On the other hand, they are competing in the same field of life coaching and business life coaching, all of those things. And I looked at that relationship, and it more approximates something I think that I might be going through in my own business and with my own coaching and speaking. Coaching people and teaching, coaching of speaking to people who are now taking what I have taught and are creating big industries for themselves. Their profiles are blowing up and their businesses are beginning to flourish. And, there's a part of me that's like, I'm very happy for it. I had to take some time, honestly, to look at myself and to acknowledge I've done great things with them. But there was something else that came up, and this is the most vulnerable part of what I want to say today. If you are that person who purports to lift the heavy weights, you have to know who you are. I teach speaking, but for the last couple years, I have been very content to only teach speaking when in my heart, I've wanted to do two things. I've wanted to speak myself and to also teach speaking. But I was so busy serving speakers that I have neglected the speaking part of my life, of my business, of my career. And so when I saw my students getting on stage doing the thing that I wanted to do in the first place, you guys, the humanity in me had to sit up and be like, okay, what's happening here? Okay, I should be doing that as well. It was not envy. It was not jealousy. You know why I know? Because there was a part of me just simply applauding them, applauding what they were doing and being so happy to see them in action. But here's the thing. I got this quote from Greta Garbo, and she said this: "Is there anything better than to be longing for something when you know it is within reach?" And my answer to that quote was, the thing that is better than that is to go out and get it. And so when I realized something was rising within me, an angst, I call it, an angst. An angst is a desire, a longing to do a thing that you see out there or somebody close to you is doing, anything that you want to do that you're not doing, that comes up again and again. And every time my speakers would get more speaking engagements, some of which I will be coaching them on, I would say to myself, Lisa, what are you doing? Are you the trainer of speakers or are you the speaker? And I decided I was both. That realization led me to the source of the angst, that I had been focusing on one thing when I now needed to put more effort into doing the other part of my business and my career and my person, which was going out as a speaker. You guys, that freed me a lot. And when I look at it from a business point of view, it makes a lot of sense that the very thing I teach students to do, if I am also doing it, I can come back and inform the teaching in a more practical and a more serious way. So that's what I've done. And in doing that, I've also found my own niche, which is the poetry, the performance poetry, which is finding my fire, talking about finding your calling more than anything else. That has freed me to go out and get speaking engagements and to come back and to speak to my students about my experiences, not just the past experiences as a speaker, because before I came to Canada, that's all I did. I spoke on stage, I did keynotes, I was on radio, on TV, I did addresses, I was guest speaker, all the works. But I came here and kind of settled into life as a mom, life in my basement perhaps, and settled on just teaching speaking. That has changed. And because I've recognized this in myself, just been curious with my feelings, because I've done the work, now I'm at a better juncture to both be a speaker and to teach speaking. Does that make sense? I'd like you to examine your own self and to see whether, yes, you are enthralled by helping other people. Is there something in you that while you want to serve, you also want to be? I go back again to the relationship between Eric Thomas and CJ, who is like his two-man, right? He's the person who helped him to blow up, honestly. He's that coach who sees you and is able to pull out your essence and make it great. And very early, CJ always tells this story that very early he realized that Eric Thomas had that gift of speaking. And he made the decision to himself step back as a speaker, which he was already doing from the time he was young. He made the decision to step back and to be the coach to Eric Thomas. I thought about it and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm not at that point yet. All of me wants to speak. All of me wants to get on stage and perform. All of me wants to do all of the things and then turn behind and help other speakers to get there and to achieve their own levels of greatness in their own lanes. So that was the second lesson about honoring yourself, honoring your desires, and sticking with it, no matter if it is awkward, no matter if you have to wade through the obvious labels that come with the negative feelings, the obvious labels of, am I being envious? Am I being jealous? What is there, Lisa? What is there? Why are you feeling this way that even while speakers are blowing up because you are involved in their speaking careers and in their coaching, even while that is happening, what is the angst within you? It was that pursuit of my feelings that has led me to, hey, I want to be a speaker and I want to teach speaking. Makes sense, doesn't it? I hope this helps somebody out there who knows you have the capacity to lift heavy, okay? Go out, do that, help them. They need you. There's a greatness in you, which is why you are able to connect with the great, but never neglect the fact that you are a great yourself. The two things are not in competition. Thanks and have a great day. I'll see you in the next podcast. Bye. Thank you so much for listening today. Now, I know that you prioritize your growth and success. So if you feel stuck in any area of your life, why don't you consider life coaching? My signature program, How to Get Unstuck Total Transformation, has helped so many professional and executive women to free themselves of limiting beliefs and habits, learn to love and prioritize themselves, set firm boundaries and stick to them, be more confident, move up exponentially in their careers, and become the best versions of themselves. How badly do you want to get unstuck? How badly do you want to be the best version of you? If you desire more, take the first step right now. Go to my website, lisamdublin.com/coaching and book a consultation with me. Let's talk about your coaching needs, because the life you want is totally possible.